Hello, and welcome to Design to Manifest, the podcast. I'm your host, Catherine Wentworth. Design to Manifest features conversations with creatives, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, healers, and visionaries who have turned their ideas into reality. Welcome, everyone, to Design to Manifest. Today's special guest is Adam Michaels. He is the CEO and co-founder of Enrollify. He is a lifelong entrepreneur, East Coast native, devoted father and husband, and a true dance music enthusiast. He's a successful businessman and an overall amazing human being who brings his passion into both business and life.
I love it. I hope I got to live up to that now. I got to live up to that intro. It's like a serious thing.
Thank you so much, Adam, for being here. I'm so grateful that you're sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting. I love, as a human being, I love you. And so to be in your energy like vortex is always is uplifting, and anything I can do to contribute and amplify it out into the universe. Let's get after it. Let's go.
I so appreciate that. So my opening question to you, Adam, is what does design to manifest mean to you?
It's about living intentionally, right? Like setting forth a true north, a point on land that you want to travel towards, knowing that, it's probably not going to be a straight line. The idea, I mean, it's such a new age thing, but there's something that's, ancient about it also, right? The future of self-development is ancient. And I think, this idea of like speaking into the universe, the positivities and like what you want to happen, that's what happens. And so I think designing a manifest is like having an idea and sticking with it at your DNA level, like where there's no other alternative outcome. And so to me, it's messy design. It's not clean and it's not neat and it doesn't look finished. And there's a lot of erasers and smudges. And that's, I guess, the manifest part. The design part, I'm really not good at. Terrible at that part, actually. The manifestation I'm good at, but the design part, it's hard to play the movie all the way to the end when you start out.
That brings me to my next question, Adam. When you were a young kid growing up in New Jersey, on the East Coast, New York, can you tell me a little bit about like growing up? And did you think when I grow up, I'm going to be an entrepreneur and own this company and be this big, succuccessful Los Angeles tycoon dude? Did you think that when you were
I think
your
probably
younger?
everything but Los Angeles. I was like the little kid on the back of the school bus that was selling bubble gum, right? I would get my 25 cents allowance. I'd buy a pack of Hubba Bubba and then I would sell it for like a quarter a piece and I'd pocket a dollar. And rather than like revel in that dollar, I'd go back and buy 4 packs and 16 packs. And soon I had like, I got busted, I think in the 3rd grade for dealing pixie sticks. Like I was always that kid, became all sorts of other businesses. I always had something going. I think my motivation as a kid was Michael J. Fox, Alex P. Keaton, like on Family Ties. I saw the movie Wall Street and I wanted to be Gordon Gekko. Like not in the perverse kind of egotistical, greedy way, but just like ambition wise. And so I always knew that. And
Adam, if I could
yeah,
just bring you back to that, maybe that is the design piece, because as a young kid, you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur and you were embodying that before you even knew, right? Like
yeah.
selling the gum.
It's crazy too. I'll even go a step further. Like I used to jokingly say, like, in terms of things I was going to be in life, insurance was on the list near Catholic priest. So they're like nowhere on the list. Like it was like so low. But then someone actually explained to me like once that I actually figured out insurance really early on. When I was like 13 years old, I went out in the neighborhood when it would snow in New Jersey. We were pretty ill-equipped. I lived on the coast. And I would go and I would shovel snow in the neighborhood. You'd make like $30 a driveway. And after one season, I was like, this is a lot of work. And so I went out and I took the money I earned and I bought a snowblower. And it was still a lot of work. So I bought 2 snowblowers and then I went around the neighborhood and I pre-sold everyone on annual contracts. And then when it snowed, I would hire the kids in the neighborhood to do the work for me. And I'd sit at home and like take phone calls and stuff. And so,
You were 13 years old at this point?
yeah. Yeah, 13 to 16 was like when that business, but I did everything. I went diving in a pond, to collect golf balls and then like would wash them and sell them to like golfers as they walk by. I always had something going.
Tell me about some of the other businesses. I love hearing this.
Yeah, so, like, I went to college. So I was, like, a waiter. I worked in restaurants. I was, like, TGI Fridays, like, when that was, like, the thing. I was the guy with the flair. Started as a busboy, and then I was a waiter, and then I was a bartender, and so I did that whole thing. That was when I found the club scene, early '90s. I was still in high school, but I was with these, like, much older people. My best friend's brother was, like, Miss Gay New Jersey. He was, like, this queen, like the queen back in the days when they were just glamorous and amazing, and there was no thing or agenda. It was just they were just He was just fabulous. And so we would go to all these places in New York City, like Wonder Bar, and like we'd go to these great spots that were like underground. And
Did you ever go to the
yeah,
Tunnel,
well, but
Sound Factory?
Limelight,
Limelight.
Palladium. We would go to Save the Robots, like after hours. We would go to the Shelter, NASA, like all the spots, right? Like there was just, and then later Twilo and stuff like that. But so my favorite, right, my favorite place of all time was Limelight. There was nothing like Limelight. It was on Wednesday nights. DJ Kyoki would spin Disco 2000. It was like, I remember seeing Moby. I remember seeing 808 State. There were like these like acts would come through, and it was like this early days. But I went to like the Roseland Ballroom, and for $45 you got a hit of ecstasy and entry into the club. Like it was still legal, maybe 1989 or 90, something like that. And it was just the scene was amazing. It was like all of these, it was so diverse. And like as a kid, like all of a sudden you're in this space where you had these club kids and these bridge and tunnel kids that were coming together, and it was such a vibe, and there was no phones. Like it was just, you were just there for the music. And so Limelight was definitely number one. And then it was like wherever you decided to go after. Next to Limelight was Wonder Bar, which was kind of a small, intimate place. And we would go there first, or we would go to this place, Big Bar. Big Bar was super cool. It was like Avenue A and Second, and it was like there was like 8 seats in it. It was just a cool spot. It was a great time. And then Giuliani came in and ruined it. But he cleaned it all up. But it was a really an amazing time to be in New York City, and in that scene, and in like the music was just so cool, and there was just a vibration and a heartbeat to it. And so yeah, I loved it. And so then when I got into college, that actually turned into something, because I got to college and I saw all these kids with like disposable income, and I was like, well, how am I going to separate them from it? I didn't want to sell drugs, which was what like my roommates did, and they sold weed or whatever. And so I was like, I'm going to become a nightclub promoter. I already knew how to do it. I had a guest list, like I was on someone's guest list, and then I would get palm cards, and I would work in New Jersey and try to get like free entry and stuff. And so we built a pretty sizable business when I was in college, and I learned all sorts of stuff.
Where in the United States did you, build this promotional
Yeah, so
company?
it was nothing fancy. The name wasn't anything fancy. It was just AA. So it was my buddy and I, Aaron and myself. I went to GW, so I went on an academic scholarship, which really didn't go in like being a nightclub promoter didn't coincide with going to class. So I think the closest thing I had to a 3.0 in college was my blood alcohol level. We just started promoting little bars and like different spots, and the vault down under, and then we were like hanging out at tracks, and it funded my entire college experience. I did that for a few years, and then I left school at 19, and at 19 I became a stockbroker. So it all went full circle. The club business was really gross. It was great, and it was a party, and it was fun, but everyone was stealing from you. Like there was a constant heartbreak of like friendships that like were just exploding up. And it makes sense, right? There was at the time there was a lot of drug use and alcohol and all that other kind of stuff. And so people act crazy when power and money and all that stuff come together.
Oh, yeah. It's changed so much in a lot of ways because now, you have all these influencers who are like, "How to sober rave," and,
Yeah,
all of these people who aren't off their heads on drugs and alcohol and who are actually, somewhat normal. But I mean, it's there. I went to vinyl back in the day, and I would say, being in the club scene in New York and in the East Coast and just in those early times, it was magical, but it was also messy. So
it was.
as yeah.
You'd walk in, you'd be like that guy on the ground there that's like in a pile. I want what he had. It was just a little, it was a little crazy that. that was the case. A lot of years ago. I mean, that was like, more than half my life ago.
So when you were doing this, when you were being a club promoter and then at 19, you were like, okay, college is not for me. This club, life like is not sustainable. Being a promoter is
Yeah,
not sustainable.
that was it.
Let's just put it that way. So when you became a stockbroker at 19, how did you even learn? I mean, YouTube wasn't around then.
What I've always had the ability to do is like get in front of someone and say, "Give me a chance." And what I found in life is that if you can get in front of someone and just say, "Give me a chance, I'll do whatever it takes." If you're really willing to show up and do whatever it takes, it's amazing how many people extend the hand of opportunity to you. But you've got to be willing to like do the shit, right? Like, but if someone said, like, look, here's this pile of horse manure. And if you shovel it, you could have everything you've ever dreamed of emotionally, professionally, financially. All you do is shovel the shit. A lot of people would be like, ugh, I don't want to do that. Like, particularly in today's environment, or like, oh, like I'm above that. I went and got this degree, or I did that, or I did this, right? Like, and so they feel like that you can skip that. And really, I was always willing to do whatever it was. And I think some of that was because I watched my mother after a divorce, like build financial stability and like, with grit and determination. My father was a building contractor, and so I would go out on the job site and I would stack cinder blocks and sweep, and I would do these like really crappy, miserable jobs. And some of them were justification to like figure out a better way. But I got in front of someone and I said, "Look, give me a chance and I'll make you a lot of money." And he was like, "All right, let's go, let's do it."
Wow.
And it was hard because my mother actually told me that adult decisions come with adult ramifications. Like she was gonna support me up until the point that I decided that I didn't want to go to college. And when I decided to do that, because I felt like that adult decision meant I was willing to take the responsibility and deal with it, I never asked for anything. Like if you're living under your parents' roof, you're asking them to support you while you go and do some crazy shit. I don't think that that's really like you're not really that committed. Like you got to go and get your own like bills to pay and your own commitments and responsibilities, and then you got to go and make it work.
Can I just comment on that for a
Yeah,
second, Adam? So just to comment on what you just said, I think that that was very insightful in the fact that if you are going to take a chance and do something on your own, there really needs to be no turning back. When I moved to New York to become a DJ, I left Houston when I was 19. I got into a U-Haul with my best friend and my boyfriend at the time, who was low key a hostage. And we went to New York City and we made it work. And my parents were divorced. And, I have a similar story. My mother was a single mom raising, four kids at one point. It was a lot. But I totally hear you that to be an entrepreneur and to be somebody who really makes it, there can't be any, oh, well, if this doesn't work out, so and so is going to take care of me.
I think there's like something about like the old burn the boats thing. You got to like this is the only thing. I just felt like y- it's really hard to be an entrepreneur. It's really hard. And people around you that are well intentioned, that love you, they care about you, they want to see you successful. They will never understand the price you're willing to pay in order to have that dream become a reality. Like they can't wrap their brain around it. And so when you're out there dealing with bullshit all day and you're hungry and you're frustrated and you're like at your wits end, the last thing you need to do is walk in the door and have someone say, "Well, you should probably go get a job." Like, well, it's probably not working out. More than anything else, it's just you don't need the added burden of that. So when I would call home to my mom and she'd be like, "How's it going?" "Oh, it's awesome. I'm doing great." Meanwhile, I'm like eating ramen and a good week, man. I got the crescent rolls to go with my red beans and rice. Like I was sneaking past my landlord's apartment to get to mine because I didn't have enough money to pay rent. When I was there, like there was no salary, there was no benefits. It was like straight commission. Like I literally got a corner of a desk and I got handed a phone and a phone book and he went, "Have at it." And I had to like go make my way. It was really hard. And I got a job waiting tables. I mean, it's crazy. So I had a Jack LaLanne membership I worked at a restaurant in DC called Sesto Senso, which had an awesome, like, by the way, right out next to 18th Street Lounge, amazing place. Didn't get to enjoy it as much when I was working or making my way in, but it was a great spot. And so I waited tables there, and then the Jack LaLanne was like a block and a half away. So rather
And
than
tell
go
us
back to
about the
my,
Jacko just because some of the listeners might not know what that is.
it's like a gym, LA Fitness, old school. It's like $19 for life. But I went there because it would took me longer to go home to my apartment and shower than I could go from the restaurant. I'd get off at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'd go and I'd shower, and then I would go in and I would literally make phone calls to Australia. I would sell Coca-Cola bonds to Australia. And this is when before the internet was like, I'm dating myself, but when people are still using America Online. Like I just was willing to do that and be exhausted. I used to say I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like that was, and now I'm tired at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I just want to go to sleep. I'm in sleep most nights by 7 o'clock. God, how life has changed. But I had to go out and figure out how to do it on my own and not have to listen to somebody else. I think being an entrepreneur later in life is really hard, right? Like, there's a lot of people say, oh, entrepreneurs like wait till you're 50, do it when you're 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Like, all you can do is fail spectacularly and learn something. And if you happen to hit a home run, right, or you get an amazing experience or you open up a door for yourself, that's the dream.
So I'm curious, when you were 19, when you left college and you decided to go and become a stockbroker and you were
Yeah.
working at the restaurant in order just to eat and try to pay rent,
Yeah.
at what point from when you were that old, how many years did you do that? Like until you were able to pivot into like actually making money off of the thing that you wanted to?
I was there for about a year and I did really well. I didn't do anything for the first 9 months. And then all of a sudden, boom, it erupted, right? And I was able to make like six figures pretty quickly. I'm a good storyteller. Like I was able to tell stories and once I figured it out, I figured out the game. But I hated it. I hated what I was doing. Like all I did was turn little piles of money into bigger piles of money. And I felt so unappreciated. I'm inspired by people that like gratitude and appreciation and like I want that like feedback. It wasn't there, right? If someone got 10%, they wanted to know why they didn't get 15%. And if they lost 8%, everyone else lost 20%. They wanted to know why they lost anything at all. And it was just so I pivoted and I wanted to do mass scale financial planning for investors that were left out of the ecosystem. I wanted to go to employers and work with working class people and help them ironically set money aside for their children's education because I thought it was the way to break the cycle of working poverty. There's an old saying, if you help enough people get what they need, you'll get more of what you want. And I believe that at my core.
The law of reciprocity.
But yeah, it's like there's no doubt it's a true thing, right? Like if you focus on helping a lot of people, you'll make a lot of money, right? And if you focus on making a lot of money, you may help a lot of people, but I think the other way around is much more fulfilling. And being in my 50s now, I will tell you, like, you can make a lot of money and feel empty. I had that path too. So, and it took me a whole lot of spiritual discovery to like really figure out what was missing, where the gap was.
At this point, when you're 19 years old and you're doing this, you did this for about a year and then you started making a lot of money. And then from that, what was the change? You said you wanted to do financial planning for working class people. Did you go into that?
I myself and two partners left the fancy office and we started our own firm called the Executive Management Group. Then one of those two partners ended up being a thief. When I was 21, I was $180,000 in debt. We were like considering filing bankruptcy and I was starting all over again. That was when I stumbled into the insurance business totally by accident with that company that now has a famous duck where you DJ'd for us in that big fancy airplane hangar and we had 1,000 people there or whatever it was. But it was quite the journey.
How long did you work for that company and what was your role there?
I was independent and I built independent agencies across the US. I spent 27 years there by accident. I started in the Baltimore, Washington market. I built an agency with about 100 people. And then my partner, who I'd previously been working with, we had a falling out. I will tell you that partnerships are like marriages. You should have a prenup going into them because most of them are bound to fail, and they fail because one person feels like they're bringing a disproportionate amount of something to the equation: energy, economics, relationships, ideas, execution. And so we had a falling out that was both because of that, and I think also just a difference in terms of how we saw the world. He was a bit Machiavellian and felt like, there was a finite amount of opportunity and money in the world. And I felt like there was like an unlimited amount of opportunity, that it wasn't a zero sum game. There aren't winners and losers, that everyone can win.
I got to back up for a second and just say this, Adam. Part of manifesting is believing that there is infinite amount of opportunity, infinite amount of money. And so that is the manifestation mindset that you naturally have.
Money's just energy and a way to keep score. And so there's no shortage of money, there's no shortage of energy, there's no right? Like if you lack energy, you won't be successful, right? Like you'll never get money. It's not the first thing. But so we just had like this divergent strategy. The challenge for him and I was that we were like siblings, and you would imagine if you had two personalities and you were leading a team of 100 people, which personality do you think would have more influence? The one that's generous, that's like, that believes in abundance and opposed to like scarcity and limits, and like who sees the potential in individuals and helps them become everything they're. So we would get into an argument and everyone would be like, yeah, what Adam says. And so I had to leave. So I moved to Chicago and I started over again. I'd come off of like, was number one in the country in a Fortune 100 company. I was making, $500,000 a year. I was 27 years old. I was single. I was like living this amazing life. I took a 90% pay cut and doubled my overhead, and I started over again. There are some people that say they're an entrepreneur, like they do it once and then they become risk adverse. There are those of us like me. I'm like a pugilist. Like I actually love being like, I love the muck and mire. Like I love getting punched in the face, which is just it's weird. Like it's definitely like I don't even know what it is. I played football in high school. I used to love getting hit. Like I like something about it like made me want to get back up, you know?
Maybe you just love the journey. And, I had this conversation with a dear friend of mine who's a coach. She has this thing called amazing activations. And we were talking about when you die or when you go wherever you go, back to the stars, the cloud. She was thinking, is it boring? Because there's nothing happening, right? And we're here on this earth to have this human experience. And so it's like you sound like you're just resilient and that you are like, okay, I'm on earth. I know I'm on earth and I'm having a human experience and you know what to expect. You know that you're going to fall down.
If you believe in a creator, I do. I'm a very strong believer in the creator. Why does he need humans? Why were we created? We were created to like fail and figure it out and get closer. Like it's all about this journey towards connection. And like the idea is that it's hidden, right? The creator's hidden in front of us. And so we have to find, like, reveal the creator in each of us. And so we're destined to fail. It's been happening since the beginning of time, from the golden calf, right? Like on. It's a constant thing. So anyway, for me, I just that part of the journey is fun. And I think when I was young, I really loved it. Like I really was. It becomes more difficult as you have a family and as you have responsibilities. And, like now all of a sudden you're deciding to take this journey and you've got a bag of responsibility. And just like I said earlier on, like why you need to move out from your house is you don't want that burden of like coming home and dealing with someone saying, like, why don't you get a job? Like when you're married and you decide to be an entrepreneur, there are moments like, because all of a sudden you're asking them to be willing to pay the price that you're willing to pay, right? If you want them to sacrifice with you, it takes a really special partner to be able to be on that journey with you. It's tough. It's tough because you don't want your kids not to have, right? Like what they could.
Of course. And it's, instead of one person, you're, on the hook for three or four people.
Yeah.
So whenever
And
whenever
lifestyle.
you And lifestyle, yes. I did a very cool practice. It was a workshop where the teacher was teaching us what it's like to live in a male world. And he was saying everybody get into a pyramid. Like the first seat would be the head, and then two, three, and four. And it's like this pyramid, right? And he was like, okay, women, you guys need to figure out like who gets number one, right? And then who number two, three, four. So he left the room and then, all the women were arguing and like, why should I get to be number one? Well, because I have this company and we help this many people and we make this much money. And so we did this whole thing, right? This pyramid. And then some of the girls were like, whatever, I don't want to be a part of this. I'll sit in the back. And then when he came back in the room, he was like, as a man, a lot of the energies are everybody in the back row. That's where your kids are going to school. That's where you guys are living. That's where, like that's what you're eating. Like so competitive. And it's a lot of weight. So whenever you decided, this is obviously before you had kids and everything, but whenever
Yeah.
you decided to pivot and when you decided to do this new business and you're in Chicago, were you successful there? How did you get from
Yeah.
Chicago to LA? Did you come straight from Chicago or was there another
No, so
iteration?
so I built a $5 million agency in Baltimore, Washington. I moved with Aflac to Chicago and I built a $20 million agency there. And that's where I met Jody, my wife. She was living in Wisconsin, and I always say she said yes because the alternative was stay in Wisconsin. But originally from Cape Town, and so we lived in Chicago, and we had Lila, my daughter, who now is at Cal Poly studying pre-vet, which is super exciting. It's awesome. And then my son was born. I'd been in Chicago for 7 years, and we were killing it. Again, like we moved into like this amazing townhouse on the Chicago River, the dream house. And then the winter was miserable. And someone called me up and said, hey, would you consider coming to California? And I was like, well, I don't really know. And I flew out and like LA was never a thing for me. In fact, as a New Yorker, like I'm from New Jersey, but as a New Yorker, like there's only one city in the world, like let alone in the United States. And LA to me was like so plastic and like, blah, like I just wanted nothing
Oh,
to do
yeah.
with it.
Someone who grew up in Houston, Texas, and then I moved to New York when I was 19 and I lived there for 10 years. I was indoctrinated like, "Dude, LA, those people are so fake."
Plastic fantastic. And then I was out, we were out here. I was in San Diego actually. I was on Coronado Island and I remember it was like January or February and the weather was like like magnificent, like typical California, Southern California day. And I was like, I think I could live here. I think I could do this. And then like literally like it was manifested out of nowhere, right? I get a phone call and they're like, "Hey, you're our plan A. We don't have a plan B. The guy who's out here is retiring. Would you be interested in coming out?" And so I came out and before I got back on the plane, I knew I was moving to California. We were waiting for my son to be born. That was like 6 months back and forth. I was here during the week and then I'd go back home and then we collected everyone and drove cross country. Then we built a $50 million agency here, and then the company decided to change the model on us and turned us into employees. And I lasted just long enough to realize I wasn't a good employee.
Yeah. You are an entrepreneur through and through. You are not an employee. So at every pivot, everything that changed, what was like the one thing, and I want to get to where you are today because that's like a huge part of how incredible your story is. But what up until that point, what was like the one thing that you would say that you rolled with the punches that you with your family? Like, how did you say to Jody, like, "Okay, we're gonna go do this. What do you think?" Or like following your gut, "Okay, it's time to do this." Like, how did you know when it was time to make those changes?
So I don't know if it's biblical or otherwise, but my life is in like a 7 year cycle. Like the sabbatical year always hits me hard. You know what I mean? Like I was in the Baltimore, Washington market for 7 years and I was like, okay, it's time to go. I was literally in Chicago for 7 years and it was time to go. I did make deliberate decisions. So the first move was right after September 11th. And so I knew what that would mean economically in the marketplace. And so I think there is something about making the decision at the right time. I moved to California after the 2008 economic collapse. So I knew coming to California in 2009 was going to give me an opportunity. Like if, the old saying, buy low, sell high, you want to come to a market when it's on its up, on an increase. Or in a decline. So it's a lot easier, right? If you had opened a restaurant at the height of a market and then all of a sudden the market collapsed, boom, you're done. But if you started a restaurant right after COVID, you're in a great spot right now, right? But if you started right before COVID, like you could have gotten washed out. So, like not everything is a pandemic. Sometimes like you can analyze where things are, but I really just listen to my gut, like more than anything else. I get bored. And once it's not interesting to me anymore, I'm a builder. I don't like tending to the garden. I don't want to do maintenance. I want to build it and, and then do something else.
I want to go back to your intuition. How do you connect with your intuition? Like, Adam, how do you know what your intuition is and maybe what a scared or just a crazy idea? Like, how do you know what your intuition
Gosh,
is?
I wish I could actually dial this in because I wish there was like, I could say something. I will tell you that most of my life was pure ego, and I'm a totally different person today than I was then. But I had a certain attitude of an invincibility. Like there was only one possible outcome, and that was success. I
That's
had a
mindset. That's mindset, Adam.
Yeah, but it actually was a dogged determination that was born of something entirely different, which was that I had taken on this identity that being responsible meant that you didn't have the luxury of emotions, and that didn't make me a very good husband. It didn't necessarily make me a great parent. It made me a really fucking solid entrepreneur. Excuse my French, because I was unflappable. So I didn't revel in success because one victory is not a trend. One good year is not, is not something to measure. Like, talk to me next year, talk to me next year. But the same held true on failures. Like, I literally, it didn't matter if it was like death or, you know, like a bank account being at zero. Like, okay, like get up, like stop, like don't be such a wuss, I'm a very different person today than that. Um,
But that
and
served you. It's kind of like that survival
yeah,
part of it served you in your younger years. So when you got to
100%.
California so when you got to California and you were working with the company and then later on they wanted to change you into a employee, quote unquote, what was the next iteration of your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, so well, while I was in the corporate role for that short period of time, I was the vice president of Western United States. I had a team of 5,000 salespeople. We did $250 million in sales. We were able to grow double-digit growth for a geography, everything west of Colorado that hadn't had a positive year in 7 years.
Adam, and you're doing all of this without a college degree?
I got my degree. It just took me 7 years to get it. I did it at night, but my degree is it's in communication. It was bullshit. Like college is nonsense. Unless you're getting a degree in, like you're learning a trade, your a degree in finance or accounting or medicine or chemistry or like you know architecture, like those things are you need that. You're an entrepreneur. Go and fail a whole bunch, and you'll learn more than you ever learned in a classroom. College is great because it exposes you to people and opportunity. But I think you could find the right community, and I don't know where it is today. Like it keeps moving around. Used to be, I think it's back in the Bay Area again. So is what I would guess right now. But it was the Bay, and then we had this great run in California, like when Silicon Beach was all the rage, like 2009 to 2015. LA was popping for entrepreneurs, and then it became Austin, right? Like because LA became too expensive and taxes were too high, and it's not business friendly, and all the other things. And South by Southwest drew everyone there. And then it became like to a lesser extent Boulder and Boise, but I think those are too small and too remote to get to really be valuable. And I think now it's spread out. So today it's either Miami or it's back to the Bay Area. The Bay Area because there's so much money going there. But it's funny, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who's a venture capitalist, and he's like, I'm not getting any good ideas anymore coming up because all the entrepreneurs are just deciding to take jobs for $750,000 a year. And they just do the calculus and they figure out like if I can make myself and my spouse can make 1.5 million a year and we do this for 15 or 20 years, we don't have to take any of the risk. You have to be irrational to be an entrepreneur if you're in the Bay. I think Miami is probably, if I were going to say where it is, or outside of the United States. Tel Aviv, I think is awesome. I think Beirut's probably going to have if they can ever get rid of Hezbollah, it's going to be great. I think Portugal has a little bit of a thing going on right now. I think places in South America, Argentina is having some cool stuff happening. Mexico City is awesome.
So, Adam, whenever you decided to leave this corporate world, how did Edify become?
No, I got fired.
Wow.
Yeah, I got fired. I was too thoughtfully disagreeable, which made me a target. Hindsight is, as a professional, I probably put myself in the crosshairs because I was thoughtfully disagreeable, which made me have some enemies. And in this world, like, there's only two people that tell you the truth. It's your enemies and people that love you. Everybody else is ambivalent and self-interested. So if someone's telling you the truth, you have to decide what camp they're in. Are they your enemy or do you love them? And I think some people took my honesty and my candor as not love, which is really where my, positioning was. I thought as a leader, we're supposed to tell the truth. We're supposed to give perspective. That's why we're in these roles. And so the details are not necessarily relevant, but like, I also think that was divine. I think that I had to be pushed out in order to go on this other journey that was really important for me.
And if I can reflect to you from your previous entrepreneurial life, it's because you had a wife, two children, a mortgage, probably, it was a comfortable paycheck that was always
Oh,
going to come.
yeah, I was making a couple $1 million a year. Like, it was, I mean, I was, it's hard to leave that, right? That level of comfort. And again, you make your way up. You got through this situation, even in a corporate setting, we were killing it. So, I think that also probably put me in on, the wrong side of some people's, you know, I guess, ideas about me. But
So I think it's amazing that the universe had other plans for you. How did you come up with the concept for Enrollify?
ironically, like, I for a long time had been dealing with this like distribution, and this distribution was struggling, right? And so, I was at the top of the food chain, and we had a real problem with turnover and retention. And I felt like the company was falling short of actually making investment and delivering value to the internal stakeholders. And so, as a business, what you want to do is make sure that if you can make sure you're delivering value to everyone in the ecosystem, then you actually have a viable business that's sustainable, right? And so if you think about any great businesses and how they work, they create convenience for the consumer or price value. They make it easier for the distributors to sell it, right? Like, everyone is benefiting, the shareholders. And so if it becomes out of balance in any way, like, it's not there. And so this business, I was watching a lot of good people get pushed out, not because they didn't like the business, not because they weren't good at it, but they couldn't make enough money to sustain. And I was watching what was going on in the gig economy with things like DoorDash, Uber. They had this great promise of self-determination and flexibility, but there was neither of those things if you were turning your car into a taxi or a food delivery service. And if you were a single mother, you weren't going to leave your 1 year old in their crib and get in your Uber and drive to the airport because it was dangerous. So I thought there was a need for an opportunity, like, to solve for those issues. There was also a need for consumer support. So what Enrollify is, we are like what appliance installers are to Best Buy, we are to corporate benefits. People on an annual basis make this $25,000 decision. Most people their comfort level stops at plugging in the coffee machine. There's no way that they're going to try to, strap on a tool belt, install the dishwasher or the gas range, because they could blow up the house or flood the kitchen. What we did was we created a gig economy of today we have 6,000 like Uber drivers that are credentialed benefit counselors that have profiles in our ecosystem. And we're mobilized by carriers and employers like insurance companies and to help their consumers, their employees, navigate the complexity of benefits. But we've removed a lot of the conflict. So we're not commissionable. And so what we're there to do is help as things become more nuanced, where AI maybe isn't the path. We have a path for every preference. So we're kind of like this a platform that takes engagement and looks at behavioral science, structural AI, so that it permeates through the entire ecosystem, and then humans, so that we kind of marry the gig economy and this AI together to deliver a better experience for everyone in the ecosystem. We're 5.5 years into it. So like I'm hoping we're, a couple years away from a big event, because that would be what the stars would say is probably necessary. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm having a ball doing it. And it's been great. None of it would have
Mhm.
been possible if it weren't for, if it weren't for, getting canned.
That is designed to manifest. It's like you don't know where you're going, but you know that if you get on the road, you're gonna get there. Like, I mean, being an entrepreneur and all of those experiences have brought you here. Can you give me an example of what your company does? Pretend I'm 5 years old.
So you're an employer, right? And you've got 1,000 employees or 100 employees. You've got one person in human resources who has a 12-month a year job. They're recruiting, building, policies. They're dealing with sexual harassment. They're dealing with all sorts of stuff. And then comes open enrollment for benefits. You spend a month figuring out what 17 different products you're going to put together in a package, working with an agency or broker. And then you spend a month trying to communicate it to employees. You're understaffed, you're overwhelmed, you're ill-equipped. And so what we are is we're a concierge service that serves as an extension of that human resources team. The first thing we do is we understand what your priorities and goals are. We'll take your messaging and we'll amplify that messaging using our tools and technology. So we use omni-channel or multi-channel communication in a really deliberate sequence. To give you an idea, last year we sent out over 54 million communications. I know what makes people move and what people doesn't make people move, right? Like MMS versus SMS versus video versus, email. We know when they open it, how they open, like all that stuff, right? So how do I eliminate the inertia and the apathy that most people have around benefits? Like nobody wants to even think about insurance. Like it's like a proctology exam. Like you don't like I
Like
know
opening your mail when the mailman comes and you get this paper and you're like, okay, I'll just put it over there. And then a week later, you're like, I haven't opened my mail.
exactly. And you get typically what used to happen was you would go into a conference room and someone would get up in front of the room and they would tell it like be really bad at it and would be really boring. And what we've created is kind of like, the equivalent of telemedicine, but for benefits, right? So you get a communication, you click a meeting, you schedule a meeting that works for you. You can go through an AI process. So I can talk to agentic AI in 20 languages. I can use agentic chat that'll serve up a recommendation based on a bunch of questions for you. Or if it's nuanced, or you just want to talk to someone because you miss human contact and you want empathy, which is my preference, then we match you with a credentialed counselor that literally is there only to help you feel cared for and supported. Right. So it's your time to ask all your questions. And so then we start asking, DJ Cat, that's all I know you as, by the way. I see your like whole name on the bottom of the screen. You're just DJ or Cat X or whatever. It's been a million names. But what we do is like, we're just there to help them navigate it, right? Like to put the puzzle together. I always say like we look for people that are generous givers of their knowledge. We've created an entire ecosystem that creates opportunity for the counselors to help support those people. We help people, save on average about $1,500 a year, avoiding unnecessary insurance or being overexposed. Like one of those two things happens 80% of the time. We help companies drive their strategy and the adoption. It's not exciting, but it's like, it's a $4 trillion business. It's a massive part of and the average employee spends $25,000 a year on benefits, right? Like total between what the employer does and what the employee does. And so again, if it was appliances, you're not spending $25,000 on appliances and then trying to do it on your own. There's a very small group of people that do it. And so we're just there to help. We just do the installation.
It's so important. I mean, nobody likes to think about insurance until there's a fire, or there's a car accident, or there's whatever it is. So it's important, or a disease.
Yeah, or you're 26 years old and you just got off your parents' insurance for the first time and you're like, "Let me call my mom." And your mom goes, "Oh, well, you need to have this," based on her own confirmation bias and like worldview, which has nothing to do with you. Like the way your parents select their insurance has nothing to do with the way you should do it. And so we all have these like biases that we carry on. Insurance and in particularly medical insurance, there's no correlation between cost and quality. If you can get the same treatment from the same doctor but pay a lower monthly premium, you win. right? Like it's navigating and trying to figure out what level of risk you're comfortable with and create a safety net against that risk. How much risk are you willing to take? And really having someone just coach you through it. That's what we do.
Amazing. So for 2026, this next year, what are you designing to manifest as we wrap up, Adam?
What I'm really working on right now is building out my team and helping them step into their power. One of my unique abilities is to identify people and the talent that they have that maybe they haven't revealed to themselves, and then trying to like pull that out. And so we've added a couple of people to the team this year. I've asked some others to like step into like bigger roles. And so for us, it's like getting the company to a place where it's ready for that next phase of growth. In my personal life, it's a whole other set of things. I continue all the time to try and deepen my connection to the creator, deepen my connection to my children, deepen my connection to my wife, and deepen my connection to myself. That's been a journey for another podcast. I think I'm a much happier person today than I ever was when I was making a ton of money. But a lot of it, and hopefully we'll make a lot of money and be happy. And those things are not mutually exclusive. I don't think you need to sacrifice one for the other. But I think I'm just in a much better spot today, and that's just been through a lot of work. I don't think it's the manifestation. I think it's the work. You got to be willing to do the work. Like whatever that pile of shit that you need to shovel is, just like get in there and don't even ask for the shovel. Just use your hands. Like do whatever it takes. It's gross. I'm sorry for the image, but really I think that's what's been the key to my success. I think it's going to continue to be my path going forward.
Yeah, we have to uncover and discard. With my closing question, Adam, what is one or two things, whatever you want to share, for someone who's listening who wants to be an entrepreneur, who wants to have a successful companies like that how you have had? Can you just share a little bit of maybe like some experience, strength, and hope?
I think one of the great misconceptions of entrepreneurs is like that you need to find your passion and pursue your passion. I think you need to find what you're good at and pursue that. And we all have gifts. And I think having enough self-awareness to know like where your strengths are, it becomes easy to build things when you're able to identify talent and like you can build, right? You can find those uncut gems and you can empower them. And so I think find what you're good at and lean heavily into that. And if that's building things or that's whatever it is, right? Like that, I think that's probably the best piece of advice I could give you. And then the other one that I said it earlier on, never expect someone else to understand your ambition or be willing to pay the price. When you get into those conversations, I will tell you when I decided that I wanted to, do this again as an entrepreneur, it was a rough conversation with Jody, like with my wife. And I said to her, like, I could go and put on a different jersey from another company, but that's not going to allow me to be the best human version of myself. And I need you to trust me. I've never let this family down. I'm not about to start letting us down, but it's going to be hard. And I need when I come home, I need you to just support me and not give me grief.
Cheerleader, cheerleader, let's
Yeah, I don't
go.
know that she's always been successful at that, but she's a great partner and she's been huge for me. She does understand it. She does tell me that she's proud of me and what we've done and I couldn't have done it without her. But I think I think there is that moment where you have to have that conversation where you have to look at someone and say, look, this is hard and I love you and I know what you're saying to me, mom, in not so many words is that you love me. And I appreciate that. But what I need you to know that this is hard enough out here with you trying to fix it. So I'm going to go and figure it out. I just need you to support me. And don't be afraid to have that conversation. And if you don't, then either you've got to rethink your partner or rethink your journey.
Mic drop. Well, a big thank you, Adam, for being here today. And as always, this has just been, I mean, every time I talk to you or see you, you have so much energy, so much light. And I just appreciate you sharing your light with us today and your wisdom. So thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And remember, if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. Designed to Manifest. See you next week. Thank you for joining me on Designed to Manifest. Each week, I feature extraordinary people living extraordinary lives who have designed the life they are meant to manifest. Sometimes intentionally, and sometimes unexpectedly, they share how success and purpose can unfold in ways they never imagined. If this episode inspired you, please share it with someone who might also be inspired, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.